The chandeliers dripped golden light over the marble floors. Scattering it across sequin gowns and polished shoes, a string quartet played in the corner, their music weaving through the low hum of laughter and champagne flutes clinking. Isla Morgan moved through it all like an observer rather than a participant, the soft fabric of her black dress brushing against her legs, her eyes fixed on the crate in the center of the room. Her work, her life was inside. She had been called in at the last minute, a precautionary measure, the gala director had said. As though the priceless painting inside needed her as much as she needed the paycheck, Isla didn't trust anyone here. She had learned young that wealth smiled with teeth, and that the most expensive cologne often masked the foulest truths. 10 years ago, her parents' names had been dragged through the press in a scandal that destroyed everything. By the time she was 13, she had learned how to keep her voice quiet, her head down, and her heart locked away. But work was work, and art didn't lie. Paintings didn't pretend to be something they weren't, not unless someone had made them that way. The crate was opened with practiced care, foam padding peeled back, and the soft sigh of protective paper giving way. Gasps of admiration rippled through the small crowd of donors, and committee members gathered to witness the unveiling. Isla stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. It was beautiful, perfect, even, the colors rich, the brushwork exquisite. But she saw it instantly, the way another musician hears a note out of tune. The edges of the signature were too sharp for its supposed age. The varnish carried a faint amber tint, a modern polymer blend no one was using in the 19th century. This isn't it, she said before she could stop herself. The gala director blinked, laughter twitching at the corners of his mouth. I beg your pardon, this isn't the original, Isla said, her voice calm, precise. It's a reproduction, a good one, but still a fake. Murmurs erupted, sharp and hissing. A man in a tuxedo shifted uncomfortably. The director's eyes darted to the crowd, searching for an ally, a distraction, anything. And then he appeared. Damian Cross moved through the guests like a shadow that had decided to take human form. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that seemed to drink in everything at once. The perfect black cut of his suit said old money, but the subtle defiance in the way he wore it spoke of someone who had made himself. Without asking permission, he didn't smile. What's the problem here? His voice was smooth, but carried an undercurrent that made people step aside without realizing they had. This young woman seems to think the donated piece is a forgery, the director said, his tone sliding toward condescension. Damian's gaze shifted to Isla, holding it there as though weighing her in some private scale. Is that so? She met his eyes without flinching. It's not a matter of opinion, it's fact. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped closer, so only she could hear. His scent was clean, edged with something sharp like cedar and smoke. You might be right, he murmured, but saying it out loud in this room could ruin lives. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning, and somehow, that made it more unnerving. She should have turned away. Instead, she found herself watching him as he turned to the director and offered a smile. That didn't quite reach his eyes. Ow. Take care of this, Damian said and as he walked away, she realized she didn't know whether he was protecting the painting, the people, or her. All she knew was that the air felt heavier now, and for the first time in years, someone had unsettled the fortress she had so carefully built around her heart. The following evening, the city glowed under a soft drizzle, its streets glistening like they'd been lacquered in glass. Isla had almost convinced herself to forget the man in the black suit, and the warning whispered in her ear. Almost. But when her phone rang and a voice low, controlled asked her to meet at a private address to discuss the painting, something in her gut told her this wasn't about art alone. The address led her to a building that didn't belong in the chaos of Manhattan, a pre-war stone facade, tucked behind wrought iron gates, its windows glowing faintly amber. She hesitated at the entrance, rain cooling on her skin, every instinct urging her to turn back. Wealth like this had sharp edges. She knew it too well. The door opened before she could knock. A tall man in an immaculate charcoal suit. Damian looked her over with military precision. Before stepping aside, Mr. Cross is expecting you. Her heels clicked softly on marble as she stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of tobacco and something darker aged wood, maybe leather. She followed the silent man through a hallway, lined with oil paintings she recognized instantly as authentic. The brushwork, the aging varnish, the whisper of canvas beneath paint. This was a collection worth millions. Damian was waiting in a room that felt more like a private study than an office. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves loomed behind him. A fire crackled low in the hearth, and in the center of the room, on a velvet-draped table, lay the painting from the gala. "You were right," he said without preamble. "It's a forgery." She folded her arms. Still standing near the doorway, "You already knew." He didn't deny it. Instead, he gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Sit." The command. In his voice wasn't arrogance, it was habit. The tone of a man who was used to being obeyed. Isla stayed standing. "I don't work for you," she said. That earned her the faintest flicker of amusement. "Not yet." Her pulse jumped. "Why bring me here?" "Because you saw what others didn't." And because he hesitated, then leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "This forgery is the least dangerous thing about that painting." She searched his face for a hint of exaggeration, but his eyes, dark, steady, were unreadable. "You think someone replaced it. I know they did, and the person who did it doesn't make mistakes." Which means the swap wasn't just about money, it was a message. Her skin prickled. "A message to you." Damian's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the fire, the light carving sharper lines into his face. "To me, and now, maybe, to you." Before she could respond, the man who led her in reappeared at the doorway. His voice clipped. "We have company." Damian rose in one fluid movement, crossing to the window. Isla followed his gaze and froze. Across the rain-slicked street, a black car idled. Its tinted windows reflected nothing, but the way it sat, engine running. Headlights low, it wasn't waiting for a parking space. It was watching. Damian's voice dropped so low she almost didn't catch it. "They move faster than I thought." He turned to her, the firelight catching in his eyes, and in that moment, she saw something that unsettled her more than the car outside. Damian Cross wasn't afraid. He was ready. "You need to decide right now, Isla," he said. "You can walk away and pretend tonight never happened, or you can stay and see just how deep this goes." The problem was, she already knew her answer. She just didn't know if it would save her or destroy her. The rain had stopped by the time Damian's car slid through the streets, but the city still gleamed as though someone had polished every surface. Isla sat in the passenger seat of a deep graphite sedan that smelled faintly of leather and something, sharper gun oil, maybe. She kept her gaze fixed on the blur of passing lights, trying to ignore the way Damian's presence seemed to fill the confined space. Like heat radiating off stone. He hadn't told her where they were going, only that if you're going to understand, you need to see it yourself. Every instinct she had screamed at her to demand answers, to keep control. But the quiet authority in his voice made her bite down on the impulse. They turned down a narrow alley between two converted warehouses. The kind of place she would never have ventured alone. A tall steel door waited at the far end. Damian cut the engine, the sudden silence thick as smoke. "This is where it started," he said, not looking at her. Before she could ask what he meant, the door swung open from inside. Another man stood there, older, with the kind of scars that told stories without a single word. He nodded once at Damian, then his eyes landed on Isla. Something in them softened, but only for a second. The interior was nothing like she expected. No cold warehouse, no dusty backroom. Instead, it was a climate-controlled vault. The walls lined with paintings, sculptures, and artifacts she recognized from textbooks and museum catalogs, some thought destroyed, others stolen and never recovered. "Where? How did you get all this?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Damian didn't answer directly. He walked to the far wall, stopping before a large, shrouded canvas. "This," he said, his hand brushing the cloth, "is the original, the one they replaced at the gala." He pulled the covering away, revealing the painting she'd studied in restoration school, a masterwork so famous, so valuable, that its absence from the public eye had been blamed on decades-old theft. The colors were alive in a way no reproduction could capture. Her breath caught. If this is the real one, then the forgery at the gala was bait. Exactly. His eyes met hers, the weight of the truth pressing between them. "Someone wanted me to know they could get close enough to send a warning without pulling the trigger." "Why you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Because years ago, I took something from them, something more dangerous than money." The sound of a door slamming somewhere in the building made her spin. Damian's hand was on her arm instantly, steadying her, guiding her toward a narrow side corridor. "Stay behind me." The older man reappeared, his face grim. "We've got eyes on the street. Same car from earlier." Two men got out. Damian swore under his breath. "They followed us." Adrenaline lit up Isla's veins. She had no idea who they were or what they wanted, but she understood one thing with perfect clarity: whatever Damian Cross was tangled in, she was tangled in it now to dot, and as he led her deeper into the vault, past art worth more than countries and secrets worth more than lives, she realized something else. He wasn't just trying to protect her. He was preparing for a fight. The vault door shut behind them with a hiss of hydraulics, sealing out the faint hum of the city and the threat lurking beyond its walls. The air inside was cool, but the tension pressed down like a storm about to break. Damian moved with the surety of a man who'd done this before, protecting someone, maneuvering them through danger like pieces on a chessboard. They emerged into a long, dim corridor lined with narrow glass cases. Inside were smaller treasures, gold coins, antique lockets, letters, and faded ink. But Damian didn't slow until they reached a heavy steel door with a keypad and retinal scanner. He pressed his palm to the scanner, leaned forward, and the lock disengaged with a heavy click. "This isn't just about a painting, is it?" Isla asked. His jaw tightened. No, it never was. The room beyond was small and almost bare except for a sleek black desk and a wall of monitors, showing feeds from cameras scattered across the city streets, rooftops, even the alley they'd driven through minutes earlier. On one screen, Isla saw the black car from before. Its doors were open now, two men leaning against it, smoking. Waiting, Damian reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim leather folder, laying it on the desk. When he opened it, Isla saw photographs, grainy surveillance shots, news clippings, and a list of names with red marks slashed through most of them. "They call themselves the Marrow Syndicate," he said. "They move stolen art, weapons, information. I know because I used to work for them until I took something they were willing to kill for." Her pulse quickened. "What did you take?" He held her gaze for a long moment. A ledger, proof of every deal, every bribe, every murder, names of people in power who still have no idea their secrets are on those pages. And the painting, the perfect cover. No one questions art shipments. But someone found out I still have the ledger. They're not after me anymore, Isla. His eyes darkened. They're after anyone I bring too close. The reality hit her like a sudden drop in temperature. The note under his door, the car, the way Damian had looked at her in the study. "You think they'll use me to get to you? I know they will." A sharp buzz cut through the air. Damian tapped a key on the desk, and one of the camera feeds filled the largest screen, showing the two men from the car now at the building's side entrance, tools in hand. "They've decided not to wait," the older man from the vault said, stepping into the room, a pistol already in his grip. Damian turned to Isla. "There's a hidden exit. I want you out before they breach." But her feet stayed rooted. "If they want me, running won't stop them." She glanced at the screens, at the intruders moving closer with each step. "You said they send messages. What if I send one back?" For a second, he just stared at her, something sharp and unreadable flashing in his eyes. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, not with amusement, but with a glimmer of approval. "Careful, Isla," he said. "Once you step into this, there's no way back." And yet, as the feed showed the first lock snapping open, she already knew she wouldn't take a single step away. The sound of metal on metal echoed down the corridor as the intruders worked the second lock. Each scrape felt like a countdown to something neither of them could take back. Damian moved with sudden precision, crossing to a matte-black cabinet against the far wall. When he opened it, Isla's breath caught not at the sight of weapons arranged with military neatness, but at the folders stacked above them, each marked with a different date and code. He handed one to her. "This is a copy of the ledger. Not complete, but enough to hurt them." She stared at it, confusion and dread coiling together. "You want me to carry this? I want you to decide if you're willing to." His voice was low but charged. "If they get in here, you can slip out the service tunnel behind that panel." He nodded toward an inconspicuous section of wall. "Take it to the address written inside. Don't look back." She felt the weight of the folder in her hands, heavier than paper should be, as though it carried the heat of the lives it could destroy. "Why me?" "Because they won't expect you to run toward them." Before she could reply, the steel door at the end of the corridor shuddered under a hard impact. Damian tapped a control on the desk, and a section of the floor slid open, revealing a narrow metal stairway plunging into darkness. "That's your way out," he said. But Isla didn't move. Her eyes locked on the monitors. The two men were inside now, moving like they knew the layout. She could see the bulge under one's jacket, a weapon, heavy and certain. The older man stepped closer to Damian, murmuring something to low for Isla to catch. Damian shook his head once, his jaw like stone. Then he looked at her again. If you stay, you follow my lead. No heroics. A rush of adrenaline hit her so hard it was almost dizzying. If I leave, you might not make it out. That's my problem. Not anymore, she said. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of something. Danger is passing through them, but not anger, acceptance. The first intruder appeared at the far end of the hall, his shadow stretching before him. Damian stepped forward, his voice calm, but carrying steel. You picked the wrong night. The man didn't answer. He only reached into his jacket. Before he could draw, Damian hit a switch on the wall. Overhead, the lights went out, plunging them into a darkness so complete Isla could hear her own heartbeat. Then, in rapid bursts, light flared from the muzzle of the older man's gun, sharp crack shattering the silence. Isla pressed herself against the wall, clutching the ledger, every instinct screaming to flee, but she stayed. Even when heavy footsteps pounded closer, even when a voice she didn't recognize shouted, "Get the girl!" A hand closed around her arm, Damian's. His grip was firm, guiding her into the service tunnel as he moved behind her, his other hand holding something she couldn't see but knew would be deadly if it had to be. Somewhere above them, the fight raged. But in the narrow dark, all Isla could hear was Damian's voice, low and steady in her ear. From here on out, Isla, you're not just in the middle of it, you're part of the war. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever, its concrete walls sweating moisture, each footstep echoing like a pulse in the dark. Damian's hand never left her arm, his grip neither harsh nor gentle, just unyielding, like the situation itself. The folder pressed against Isla's chest felt almost alive, its edges cutting into her palm with every stride. She couldn't shake the thought that she wasn't holding paper. She was holding the reason people were willing to kill. A faint rumble vibrated through the floor above them, muffled shouts, the thud of boots, the crack of another shot. The sounds made Isla quicken her pace. Damian kept her moving, his voice low and measured. We're not going back the way we came. The syndicate will flood that building in minutes. We need to get to the river. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, lit by a single bare bulb swinging overhead. The older man from the vault was already there, a bloodstain spreading across his sleeve, but his posture steady. They split up, he told Damian, his voice gruff. Half went upstairs, half into the street, but he looked at Isla, his expression unreadable. Someone else got here first. Before she could ask what that meant, a shadow stepped from the far side of the chamber. The newcomer's presence shifted the air itself, tall, wrapped in a coat the color of midnight, his face in partial shadow. When he finally spoke, his voice was smooth, accented, and entirely too calm for a place like this. I see you found her, Cross. His gaze slid to Isla, lingering just long enough to make her skin prickle. The girl who doesn't know what she's carrying. Damian moved in front of her, his body a barrier. You're too late, Calder. The man Calder smiled faintly. Too late for what? To save her from becoming just another casualty in your war. His eyes glittered in the dim light. Or, too late to tell her what's really in that folder. Isla's pulse kicked. What is in this folder? She asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Neither man answered immediately. Damian's silence was a wall. Calder's was a dare. Finally, Calder said, "It's not just a ledger. It's a map hidden in the accounts, buried in the numbers. A map to something your parents died protecting." Her breath caught, cold, and jagged. My parents. Damian's jaw flexed. He's twisting it. Am I? Calder tilted his head, his tone almost gentle. She deserves the truth. Cross. That ledger leads to a cache your parents hid before the syndicate tore them apart. Gold, documents, proof that could bring down more than just the marrow. But you, his smile turned thin, you want it for yourself. The older man's hand tightened on his weapon, his stance shifting. Damian didn't move. His voice, when it came, was a quiet steel that cut through the stale air. If I wanted it for myself, she wouldn't be here. The tension stretched until the swinging bulb stilled. Then a faint hum rose in the distance, the sound of engines. Fast and getting closer, they found the river exit. The older man said. Damian grabbed Isla's hand, pulling her toward a rusted ladder that led upward. We finish this later. Calder didn't follow, but his voice carried after them, smooth and certain. She'll have to choose. Cross. Between you and the truth. The ladder ended in a grate that opened onto the riverfront. Rain had started again, thin needles against her skin. Down the dock, two black boats cut through the water toward them. Syndicate men braced at the bows. Damian stepped in front of her, pulling a pistol from under his jacket. "Stay behind me," he said, but Isla shook her head, clutching the folder tighter. Something had shifted inside her. She wasn't just a courier now. She was a piece of the Bordan maybe, if she played it right. The one thing they hadn't planned for dock. She met Damian's eyes, rain sliding down both their faces. "No," she said, her voice steady. "We do this together." And in the glare of the approaching boats, with the river boiling beneath them and enemies closing in, Damian gave her the smallest nod of silent agreement that whatever came next, it would not break them. But somewhere in the shadows behind, Calder was still watching, and Isla couldn't shake the feeling that his final words were not a threat, but a prophecy.